What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be addressing one of the bigger questions that I've been getting a lot in the comment section on this channel, and that is how I do my taxes when I'm working with UberEats. So this applies to a lot of the different apps in the gig economies. I'm going to go through, really run through, just give a broader overview of how I'm doing my taxes. Now, this is not tax advice. I'm not a tax professional, and I 100% recommend speaking with a tax professional before you do your taxes. This makes sure that you're not going to miss anything and you're not going to owe any money later on to the IRS. But I still wanted to give a broad overview of how I'm doing my taxes because I know it can be a very stressful situation. There's a lot of you out there asking questions, wondering what you should do, and a lot of people also using TurboTax, which can make it pretty easy to do your own taxes as a gig worker. But before we hop into that, this video is brought to you by MovingHelp.com. They reached out to me to do a video, and I'm going to do a full-length video coming up here about working with them, moving through U-Haul. Essentially, they have a partnership with U-Haul, and it's like a lot of the other apps out there, such as Dolly, except that MovingHelp is only taking a 15% commission, and you get to set your own rates on the app. So whatever you feel like your time is worth, you can set your rates. Customers can choose you to work. You don't have to bring anything. They rent the U-Haul, and the U-Haul comes with the equipment. You then help load and unload things onto that vehicle. I've worked with these apps in the past, and I thought that this had a unique value proposition with MovingHelp.com, being that they take that flat 15% cut, which is less than a lot of the other apps in this industry. So with springtime just around the corner, this can definitely be a great way to make money. Moving is one of the higher paying gigs in the gig economy, and the spring and summer months are always hot, so make sure to check them out. I'll leave a link down below. Okay, so let's get back into how I'm doing my own taxes for Uber Eats. So they send me the e-doc. It's a 1099 NEC, and that's where I find out my total wages as an independent contractor. Now for me, essentially I'm using TurboTax. That's what I've used in the years past to do my own taxes as an independent contractor, also for my own business. I've always found it fairly intuitive, but I've also gone to tax professionals, and you can find those for relatively cheap as well. I do recommend talking to them and paying a little bit more. It can definitely help you out, but I'm going to show you guys what I'm doing when I'm using TurboTax. So I'm taking the info from that 1099 and I'm going to apply it in TurboTax where it asks me for my wages from 1099s. So you might have multiple of these. You might work for Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, and you can compile them all in there in TurboTax. Now, once I've done that, I'm really just trying to figure out what my expenses were as an independent contractor. And there's really just like one thing that is the most important here, and then there's like some subgroups of expenses that you're gonna wanna hit. You're gonna wanna find every deductible, every expense you can. I'm always looking for everything, but there's always one group that makes up the bulk of it, and that's my mileage using the standard mileage deduction. So I like to use the standard mileage deduction because I have an older car that doesn't require a lot of maintenance, and it gets good gas mileage. So in my case, it always makes sense to use that. Most tax professionals that I've heard from say that the standard mileage deduction is very generous, and so a lot of times it makes sense to use it. But maybe you bought a new car to deliver food and it's required a ton of maintenance. In that case, you may want to piece out how many miles you drove, how much gas you paid for, what the maintenance expenses were, maybe the depreciation of your vehicle over this time period. You can do all of that work separately. For the most of us, we're driving older beater cars that don't take a lot of maintenance, get fuel efficient, miles to the gallon. So that standard mileage deduction of 58 cents per mile multiplied by the entire number of miles that we drove is going to give us all of the expenses related to our vehicle. So that's the gas, that's the maintenance, that's everything vehicle related. Once we've put that into TurboTax, once I've done that, I can then look for other expenses. So some of my other expenses and my other deductibles are my home office, my cell phone bill, my medical expenses, so I'm paying for medical insurance every month, and my self-employment tax. We all know that we're paying more for the self-employment tax. Normally when you work for a company, they pay half of it, you pay the other half. As an independent contractor, you're paying that full amount, but that half that the employer would be paying, you get to come back and deduct that from your total income when you're doing your taxes. TurboTax is going to basically do all of that for you. It's just something that they're going to prompt you, and they're going to find out as soon as they know you're an independent contractor. But just something to be aware of. Now, as far as my cell phone bill, I usually do 40 to 50% of this is related to my business. Because I don't have a separate business cell phone, I just have one, but I figure I'm using it about half the time for work, whether that's delivering, whether that's, doing these videos. Personally, that's what my ratio is. So 50% of that monthly payment is going to be expensed. And next comes the home office. This is actually pretty important for a couple of reasons. I have always used a home office as long as I've had my own business, as long as I've been an independent contractor. Personally, I'm here, shooting YouTube videos, I'm working on my website. But even if I weren't doing that and I were just driving, I would still have a home office. I would come back at the end of the day, I would look over my mileage, I would, do some strategy, whatever I need to do for my business, I would do that at home, and I would absolutely take that home office deduction. Usually I just go with the standard one. There's some other methods to go about it, but I don't like to get too deep into that. One of the reasons why I like the home office deduction is because it also helps me with my mileage deduction. And here's the reason why. When you use UberEats, when you use Lyft, when you use DoorDash, when you use Grubhub to track your mileage, they're going to be tracking the miles while you're delivering. So that distance in between deliveries, the time you're driving between deliveries, they do not record that. The distance between your house and your first delivery, the distance between your last delivery and your house, none of that gets recorded by those apps. But every time I have ever expensed my miles, I have expensed every single mile since I have left the front door of my home office up until the point when I've returned back to my home office. And that's, as far as I know, the way that the IRS allows me to deduct mileage when I have my own business. When I'm leaving my office to work to when I come back to my office, all of that is deductible. And so the fact that I have a home office not only gives me that extra deduction, but it also increases my mileage rate, the total expenses that I'm deducting for driving my car. And as I mentioned previously, that is the biggest expense that I'm having. That's going to be, like thousands of dollars that I get to not pay taxes on because I'm expensing it. Now, there's definitely some other deductions, some other expenses that are going to come up. I definitely did not cover everything, but I just wanted to go through the stuff that I found was most important that, usually sticks out to me. If I'm using TurboTax, they usually kind of prompt me for some other things that could potentially be expenses or deductions. They're really good at that. Also, when I've talked to tax professionals, they've been pretty helpful about finding that stuff, but it's always good to walk into somewhere kind of knowing what you're looking for and knowing which questions to ask. And that's why I put out this video, not because I am a tax professional. I am not. I do not want to be giving tax advice. I just want to be giving people an idea of what I'm doing so they can kind of feed off of that and piece their own plan together before they start doing their taxes. And it can make the whole process less burdensome, less annoying, because it can be a very annoying process. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. I'll do my best to answer them, but once again, not a tax professional. I would always talk to one. In the past, when I've done my own taxes with TurboTax, I've actually gone to a tax professional. H&R Block used to have this thing where they would do your taxes, but you don't pay till you file. So I would just run it through them too, make sure I got the same number, which I did, and then I knew I was good to go with TurboTax. I'm not sure they're still doing that. But it's always good to talk to one of those guys, especially if you're nervous. Don't expect me to be able to answer all those questions, but throw them out here and I'll see what I can do. Also, check out MovingHelp.com if you're looking for spring and summertime gigs. Good way to make some fast money, some pretty good money compared to a lot of other apps out there. Yes, you're working a little bit harder than delivering food, but that can be rewarding, and it's definitely rewarding as far as pay goes. I've worked with a lot of these other delivery apps, and they can be very high paying, especially in these months. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.